Good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from today. So, this week we talked about trauma and its impact. And the reason why this is such an important topic is because trauma, most of us have some kind of trauma, and most people don't realize how many things fall under this category. And why does it matter that we know that we all have a little bit of this in varying degrees? Well, it matters because these experiences, these stories that we hold deep inside ourselves, they really, really set your beliefs and the way that your brain is conditioned to think subconsciously. And what that means is that there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is essentially the part of the brain where our emotional responses come from. And so with that, what happens is when we are in a present day situation, so like, I don't know, you're in work and your boss is saying something, maybe something a bit critical, and you feel really upset. And the level of upset feels greater than the situation might necessarily need or require. And that's what a trigger is. It's like the amygdala feeds into your brain without you consciously thinking about it. It feeds into your brain all of these messages because it's going, hang on, this situation feels like something that happened to me in the past. And the brain's job is to keep you safe. And so it goes into high alert mode. And before you even have had a minute to realize, what happens is you get swept away into the emotion, into a train of thoughts that happen in a flash. And before you know it, you're responding in a way that doesn't quite work to your benefit anymore. Maybe it did in a past situation, but it doesn't anymore. But what's so amazing about the effect of trauma is that it essentially means that you can be in a present moment and be re-experiencing the emotions, the feelings, and the responses of the past. So you lose the ability to respond. So you react. That's where the word react comes from. You are re-enacting something that happened in the past rather than responding, which is about being able to reason in the current moment. And yeah, I know for a lot of people it's been a bit of a surprise how many things from the worksheet show up as trauma, or fall into that category. And I've had a couple of emails and one comment on the question post that I put out earlier today. And the general question that's been asked about, okay, so now I recognize that there might be a few deeper issues for me that might be blocking me from living my best life, from being bold and brave and doing all the great things that I want to do work-wise. So what can I do about it? That's always the next question. Now, I'm going to give you a series of questions today that can help you to reframe some of those beliefs. Whether you can actually reframe them by just being more aware of them and then reframing the stories that you tell yourself is not 100% certain, because some traumas are bigger and more serious and deeper than others. So for the vast majority of people who come to me for career coaching, they're more than able to reframe with just some simple questions. But if you find that you are going into this thought process and you're still noticing that these traumas, and even with awareness that these repetitive thoughts and physical responses are showing up for you, then that's normally a sign that a little bit more therapeutic work is needed. And now that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or anything bad. It's just that, the one thing that connects us all as human beings is going through really crap and difficult times and difficult and terrifying sometimes experiences. And, um, you know, if you can't think your way through the answers to this, it doesn't make you silly or bad or ridiculous. It makes you human. And like the brain is a very, very powerful tool. It's something that works, and it often works. It's not quite under our control. And knowing that most of the things that our body and our brain does is subconscious. So, what does that mean? The easiest thing to think about is the heart, right? You depend on your heart to beat and to flush the blood around your body, to bring the oxygen in, to carry it into all of your organs and tissues and muscles so that you can live, right? So you can breathe, so that you can function. But you don't have to consciously think about making your heart beat. It's all taken care of kind of miraculously, right? And there are so many things like that that we are unaware of in our day. So if you had to consciously think about everything that your body does, like every tiny little sound that happens to you, every single part of a picture of the vision that you can see through your eyes, every single thought that came up in your brain, if you had to consciously do it all, it'd kind of be like, when your computer RAM gets too busy and then it just goes black and you have to restart it. That's what it's kind of like. So it serves a very positive function that a lot of the things we do in life are on autopilot. And this is why you'll hear many coaches and many successful people talk about the importance of building positive habits. But most people think about positive habits in terms of actions. And actions are great for building new data points in the brain. So when you take an action and it's a different action than you've taken in the past, it feeds your brain with a new data point, and you can really, through experience, shift some of that thinking, some of the patterns of behavior. But it really starts with thinking. So our thoughts, everything that, if you think about everything that's been created in the universe, everything that every business has ever produced, every single part of it it originates with a thought in someone's mind. And then once we think about something, we begin to talk about it and express it. That might be verbally, it might be pictorially, it might be in writing, in any form of expression. And then after we begin to express it, we then begin to take action. So we might express it, create a plan, and then take action. So thoughts create our feelings and our intentions and plans, but then they create our actions and the experiences that we have in life. And so, in Japanese culture, they have this saying, wabi sabi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, to anyone that's Japanese. I'm sure you can correct my terrible pronunciation. But it's essentially this concept that beauty lies in the flaws. So one of the things that they do is if a plate is broken or a bowl is dropped, they will piece it together, and they will take the cracks and they will melt gold into those cracks and piece it back together, because they're like, there is beauty in the flaws. There's a great book that's all about turning your mess into a message. And this is all about how the most wonderful and juiciest things come from being able to do something positive with any mess. And in order to do that, you do have to reframe your story. So what I didn't want to do in this group was make anyone feel uncomfortable or ask them anything too personal about the specific traumas. But if anyone does want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to do that. Either PM me on here or drop me an email, holly@evolving.careers, if you do want to discuss anything further, because it can often be a little bit of a shock to realise, oh gosh, there's something really going on for me here, or there might be something for me to look at here. And so yeah, I was talking about how you can reframe these stories. So I've just got a couple of questions that will help you to do that. So, you know, one of the things that I see is that with trauma, what tends to happen is there's a sense of either shame or humiliation or just like loads of negative judgments that we lay on ourselves. And those can be things that are like, you know, oh, I'm so bad, I'm a bad person, I'm not good enough. What else? I'm too this, I'm too that, too, I don't know, too, oh, what's going on with my screen there? Too big, too bold, too noisy, too aggressive, too impatient. You know, there's so many things that we tell ourselves. And this wabi-sabi concept is all about embracing your flaws, embracing the things that feel shameful and the things that feel humiliating and the things that feel negative, and embracing them in the sense of not saying, oh wow, this is brilliant, you know, this thing happened to me or this is how I feel, but embrace them in the sense of allow yourself to experience the emotion, because it's only when we experience and identify what we're actually feeling that we can begin the journey of healing the things that are blocking us on the journey to either know, you know, finding your sense of purpose or figuring out where you're heading in the world, or why you always seem to have this one particular issue that you just can't get past. And, you know, in my opinion, and this is something I'm working through in my own studies as well, most coaching programs don't go, especially around careers, they don't go deep enough. So, you know, at best, what a lot of coaches do is they give a series of coping strategies in order to help a person better handle a triggering situation, when in reality what that person needs is to look at, you know, maybe how they relate to people and the world, maybe look at issues in childhood or even in later life which are creating triggers for them, where they're not able to just respond, they're reacting instead. So these 4 questions, and these come from another career coach who is absolutely wonderful, called Kathy Caprino. Now, these questions are from her book, and I just think they're so powerful for helping you to think through, okay, well, this is what happened to me. So I gave you in the lesson a technique called the ABC method, which is accept or acknowledge what you're feeling. See if you can name what it is that you're feeling. Then notice how your body responds, whether you feel a tension or a tightness of breath, whether there's a particular spot in your body where you feel it. And then finally C, which is choose your choice about what you want to do, but based on what you can control rather than what you can't control. So I gave you that tool, but let's talk specifically about that. Using that tool will help you to maybe in the moment identify what's going on for you or what you're feeling and deal with it quite quickly. But in terms of these if there's slightly deeper issues, that's like how to deal with a trigger. This is more getting a little bit deep. So the first question is, what story am I telling that keeps me stuck as a victim who I don't like? So for me personally, there was a time in my life when I was telling myself um, that I would be crazy to leave my engineering job. And that was a story that was keeping me stuck as a victim. It was keeping me stuck in a career that wasn't fulfilling me. It was actually making me quite miserable. It was keeping me stuck, not being able to connect in the world in the way that I really wanted to, really powerfully, really um, enjoying myself. Okay, not every day because that's life, but really feeling like I was engaged with life. And so I'd invite you to ask, and if you want to and you feel brave enough to, share just now, what is the story that I am telling that keeps me stuck as a victim who I don't like? What is that story that you tell yourself? It might be a story of, I'm no good at, I can't do the thing that I want because I was always told I'm impatient. It might be, I feel rejected because of something that happened. So, you know, if my family, for example, rejected me, how can I expect anyone else to accept me or see my worth? It might be something along the lines of, I'm too old and all the jobs out there are age biased, and so I'm just going to stay where I am. It might be the story that, you know, what you're doing currently is safe and secure and you don't want to move out of that, even though that's what you really want to do. By telling yourself all the time this story of, it's safe, it's secure, it's not that bad, oh, you know, plenty of people are worse off than me, this isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone, oh, just, you know, put a brave face on, then, you know, really try to identify what all of those stories are. You know, write a big list if you need to. You know, give yourself half an hour, just write them all down, get them all out in one go. um, the second question then is, to who am I handing all of my power? So in each of those cases, in each of the stories, it may not be the same person. Very commonly, it it will be each of the people that you're handing your story, your power to, might all have certain traits, because it's very common when we've been through any form of trauma. It's very common that we attract similar situations back into our life so that we can heal it, so that we can overcome it. I don't understand why that happens. It's just what seems to happen and show up in people's lives. So, you know, that might also be a clue to a couple of stories to be aware of. You might have stories that relate to, oh, you know, why am I always the one that attracts that kind of person? Why am I the one that always gets left behind? Why am I the one that's never invited? Why am I the one that never gets ahead? Why am I the one that's always got to fight for everything? Any of those why questions that you ask yourself are so, so important to take notice of. When we have been through trauma, the classic response is to ask the question, why? So when something really bad happens and we can't quite believe it and we're in shock and we're overwhelmed, because remember that definition of trauma is something that happens that overwhelms our ability to cope. And all we can say in response is, why me? And what the brain does is the brain starts to look for a rational reason about why you, and it creates stories, and it can piece random ideas from the past into your subconscious as, oh, well, that's why it happens. But it's not true. It's just a conditioned belief that's been put there from as a stress response in order to protect you. But when you go out of that trauma situation, you no longer need that story. You no longer need that thing to keep you safe. So you've got to free yourself from it, and you do that by bringing awareness to it and by reframing it. So who am I handing all of my power to? If you want to give an example of the type of person, you don't have to say any names. Feel free to put it in the comments and share with me what type of person are you giving your power away to? And giving your power away to, I just want to define that, but feel free to ask any questions if you have them. But I just want to define what giving your power away means. So often we think that we are being strong, but what we're actually doing is giving our power away. So an example of this would be in a work situation, and I'm going to use one from I'm going to use, what should I use? Actually, in a work situation, let's say you're in some kind of meeting or some kind of conversation with someone at work or a group of people, and you feel really that what they're saying is inappropriate or not right, or you strongly disagree with it. But you might give yourself reasons where you know that your reaction, your charge is quite high. So what you do is you breathe and you don't say anything at all. And you think to yourself, oh, I'm being really strong because I'm taking care of this. I'm not causing trouble. This is all going to be safe and secure. But in reality, whenever you hide your true opinion, and I'm not saying you have to go around and give everyone your opinion and your 10 pence worth or 10 cents worth, depending on where you are. But you do have to, at least to yourself, admit honestly how you feel and what you think, and in order to hold your power, because it's only when you acknowledge that you're able to make a clear choice about how to respond to it. But when you shy away from that because, let's say, you don't like speaking up, you feel it's too confrontational, or you don't like to rock the boat, or you don't like to have an opinion because perhaps that caused conflict in your home, perhaps somebody in your care system had trouble accepting that different people have different opinions, and that's okay. That's just life. It's everyone's entitled to their own views and opinions and choices, you know. So I hope that kind of builds the story of what giving your power away can look like, because often we do it in lots and lots of subtle ways rather than necessarily overtly. The overt stuff is the stuff you will spot first, but there tends to be deeper and deeper layers of it. So the third question then is, what makes me continue to believe that I'm not as good as or good enough? So what makes me believe and continue to believe that I'm not good enough or not as good as other people? What is it that makes you believe that? Is there a story? Is there a memory? Is there something that you say to yourself repetitively? Very commonly, what I see with clients is mostly a lot of stuff around feeling ashamed. So Nicola Humber touched on the topic of lazy a few weeks ago and how that's a myth. We all need to be in that space of rest and the fertile void at certain times. Now, if you're in that permanently, then maybe that could be construed as lazy. But even that, when people get stuck there, there's usually a reason behind it. It's not because they're intrinsically lazy as a person. Another story that people say, the big one, you know, is really for most people, especially for women, we don't feel good enough. We need a lot of reassurance that we're doing a good job, that we are viewed positively in order for us to view ourselves positively. And if you've been in a work situation where you haven't had a lot of that for a long time, it can really bring down your sense of what you're capable of, what you can do. And it can really hold you back if you're making any kind of shift in your business or your career, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like if you're going out on a night out, and let's say you're single and you want to meet someone, you're going to get dressed up and make yourself look the best you can, right? But if you were to go out and just wear no makeup, go out with greasy hair, wear the most awful outfit you can think of, you're not going to present yourself in the best way, not because you can't pull off that look, but just because you might not feel so good in yourself, being out and about and showing yourself. And it's a bit like that in terms of our thought processes. So when we're making these beliefs and telling ourselves consistently that we're not good enough or we're not as good as others, then that consumes like our whole being, in our body language, in our voice, in our tone, in our level of energy. There's so many subtle factors that as humans we read that aren't just obvious, and people pick up on it. So really get to know that what are those things that you are telling yourself all the time. And the way that it's important to know that the way the brain learns and can be trained out of some of these bad habits, or unhelpful habits rather than bad, is by the power of suggestion. And so suggestion is when you actively tell yourself positive things. Some people might call it positive affirmation. Some people might call it suggestion. Some people even call it meditation. But if you need some kind of pick-me-up, if you have a lot of these negative thoughts that are blocking you from taking steps towards your goals, whatever they are in work, then one of the things that we have in our paid packages is something called the Install Your Inner Cheerleader package. So if you buy like the second package up on our offers on evolving.careers, then what happens is you get all the recordings so you can go through them again. You get a workbook that has all of the workbook sheets that you've done in all these sessions, but it also has extra detail, extra sessions, extra journaling, loads of great fab stuff. And then this Install Your Inner Cheerleader, which is all the common messages that women tell themselves, negative thoughts, beliefs, that sort of thing. And it basically installs the inner cheerleader, the positive messages into you. And all you do is listen for 21 days. And I haven't completed it yet, but what I do know is this stuff really, really works. If you can't do that, go on YouTube. There's tons and tons of examples of this. And I guarantee two things that can really help to change these negative or comparative beliefs about not being good enough or as good as others are: every night before you go to bed, as you're just falling asleep, think of something that you are grateful for from the day. People talk about gratitude, but they think it's just this thing that you do because they don't quite know how to use it. If you use it in the couple of minutes before you go to sleep, and you can try this out tonight, I guarantee if you go to sleep and you just before you fall asleep, you think of 3 things that you've been grateful for today. They don't have to be big things. They can be small, but find something to be grateful about, and you will wake up feeling slightly more positive and slightly more energized in the morning. Go and test it out. And then the second thing that can really help, have I said the 2? Is the recordings and the suggestion. So they're the 2, I think. And then the final question number 4, is how can I change these stories? How can I reframe them? Okay, so this is one thing you can do is you can get your brain more focused on really positive things, like I've just said. But the other thing you can do is really reframe the stories. So once you know what the stories are, um, you've got to get yourself to a positive space about that story. And the ABC technique that I taught in the last lesson can be really helpful for that. So I remember once when I was going to an interview for a job, and I felt really, really rubbish inside myself. I had no self-belief. I'd been worn down. I was feeling a bit useless for various reasons. And I was terrified of going for this interview because I just thought, I felt so rubbish about myself. I didn't think that I would get the job. I thought that I was going to mess things up. And I realized I had this story, which was around, I was really nervous that I'd had a gap in my CV. It was only 6 months, so it wasn't massive, but I was terrified that this would come up and it would stop people from hiring me. And the reason that this story tormented me and came negative was because um, I was telling myself the story that, oh, it would look so bad to have a gap. I haven't done enough in that time. Um, I couldn't give something tangible that I'd done. Um, and I couldn't really give a logical explanation. I literally took a break from my career because I wanted to make a career change, right? And I didn't know how I was going to do that. I did the most silly thing, and I definitely wouldn't recommend this. Having done it, I can say with hindsight, don't quit your job until you know what you're going to do instead, if you can help it, or not, at least not unless you've got plenty of money in the bank and are doing things to keep your morale up and to remind yourself that you are good, that you can do things, that you're worthy, that you can add value in the world. Because without that reminder, it's a difficult battle for anyone. And so I really had to reframe the story. And I remember talking to someone, and she said to me, you know, Holly, like, I think what you've done is really brave. Like, you knew something wasn't working for you, you knew you had to change it. You've told me that, you know, you took that break because you needed to get into a different mindset to change your environment. And, um, you know, okay, you haven't gone straight into a training course or into this or that, but what you have done is you've made a commitment to what you wanted to do and to where you wanted to go, and you've set out to do it. And now you're going for a new job. And okay, you may not be the strongest candidate and you don't know what you'll be up against, but you know that you're good at certain things. And if you focus on the positives rather than the negatives, it's massively going to help you. And so I learned a really, really big lesson from this, which was when that person said that to me, inside, I suddenly had some self respect. I suddenly had some self worth. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to present if they ask me about it and say, yeah, like, I decided to change my career. That's why I'm here at this interview. And I took a little bit of time out to work out what I wanted to do instead. And in order to do that, I needed to get out of doing the things that were not making me feel fulfilled and reconnect with what was making me happy. So that's what I've done. You know, the irony is they didn't they did ask me, but I just said, oh yeah, I took the time out for a career change, and they didn't ask me a single thing about it. They were just like, oh, okay, fine, totally got it, no issues. And I was really shocked by that when I'd gone to the interview, and I did actually get the job in the end. But it's so interesting how, when we tell ourselves those negative stories, how much they reduce our opportunities, they reduce the way we present ourselves to people. And I'd say, like, as you go through your CV, if you're applying for jobs, or as you think about the products that you want to create, if you're a business owner and you sell and create products, you have to be absolutely in a very positive place with every single thing that you are saying, expressing around either your CV and all the bits of experience, or around the products that you're selling and the services that you offer. Because if you're not able to do that, there's a great saying that says, if you don't value yourself, you can't expect anyone else to. And I think it's so true, because if you don't value yourself, no one else is going to believe in you, because they can only go off what you've got to say, especially in a work or a sales situation, because they can only go off you, right? So if there are things that you are currently expressing around work, in your CV, in your cover letter, in your pitches, in your marketing, in your social media, whatever it might be, make sure that there is no content in there that makes you feel bad about yourself. And if you as you go through it, you notice, oh, this is a bad story, I tell myself about it, or that's a bad story about it. Think about how you can reframe it. Think about what are the positives around this story. And sometimes some stories can't be transformed into a positive. You can't put a silver lining on it. And there are absolutely situations like that. And in those cases, own it. Honesty is always the best policy. And the more you own your story, the more truthful you can be, the more people will recognize that and want to help, because they'll know where they're at. The second you try and cover it up, the second you try and hide it, that's when people start to feel a bit iffy, because people subtly know when lies are being told or when something isn't completely true. And that sense of a lack of trust is something that you absolutely want to avoid in terms of what you communicate, either about your job, applying for a job, career change, in business, with prospective clients. So then how do you begin to change those stories? How do you begin to reframe them? It's literally just step by step, and you have to think about all of the positives that you could possibly say until you find something that resonates. If you can't do it alone, it is very difficult to do alone for some things. Some things you'll find no problem, but some things are really difficult to do alone. So if you have a best friend, a colleague at work who you trust, a mentor, even a family member, but family members tend to be a bit more biased and you tend not to believe them as much. So the further away from your family you can go, the better, because the more likely you are to believe the person's opinion, because they're not so vested. But equally, you might have members of your family who you're like, oh my God, they tell me the truth in just, sometimes too much of a direct way. So make the call. But ultimately, tell them what the negative story is that you're telling yourself, and ask them to say what they think about it, and tell them that you're looking to reframe it to a positive that you can believe in, because unless you believe it, no one else will, because it'll be in your energy. It'll really hold you back. So I hope that's given some tips on how to actually address some of the issues that you might have realised, some of the things that might have come up for you in this week's lesson. If there's anything that I've missed or anything that you want to ask further, again, drop me a question now. And I will also repost the link to the packages. I'll repost that on Monday. And the other thing that I want to say is, next week, Anne-Marie is joining us to give a rapid transformational therapy session about getting in touch with connecting with your sense of purpose. And on the one hand, her session is going to be brilliant because it's going to help you connect with your purpose a bit more deeply. It's going to do it in a therapeutic way. But the main reason that I've, really brought Anne-Marie into this group is that I've done a lot of therapy myself. I've done a lot of personal work, and I've tried a lot of different modalities. So, everything from talking therapy to counseling to psychotherapy to cognitive behavioral therapy, family constellations, action and commitment therapy, and rapid transformational therapy as well. So, and I've done lots of other things as well, more woo-woo things, shall we say, Reiki and yoga and all these different things, because I'm just like, I'm always looking for tools. I'm always looking for things that are going to help me, right? And I've got no shame in saying that, because I just think the more we grow and the more we develop, you know, I think one of the biggest shames of this decade is that we still see these tools as for people who've got problems. And actually, you know, like I said at the start, we're human, we all have problems. Why aren't we using these tools if they're there? This story that we tell ourselves about around, you know, that's for people who've got real problems, or that means I'm weak or broken or there's something wrong with me. Absolutely not, you know? And it's really such a transformational process. I don't think there is anything wrong with getting a tool or getting a piece of knowledge or a piece of information that helps you move forward towards the life that you want. And what I would say is, if you've been stuck for a very, very long time, if you've been trying lots and lots of different things and feel like, you know, you're circling around it but never quite getting to the core of it, the only therapy that I've done that's really, really resolved a lot of things for me has been rapid transformational therapy. As in, within one session, the things that had been bugging me internally that I just wasn't at peace with, I'd say they went from like 90% stress and turmoil down to 10%, literally within, I think the sessions are like somewhere between an hour and 2 hours. And then you follow up listening to the recordings. And what I found was, within days, things were shifting in my life. Friendships were shifting, relationships were shifting, my attitude to problems was shifting. And all of a sudden, instead of getting emotional and all tangled up in it, I was literally like, wow, I'm super calm. And I knew how to respond, and I could see what was really going on. And so I think, you know, obviously all the other work I'd done has played into that, and I can't say that that will happen for everyone. But with this therapy, it works very quickly. Its whole point is to get to the core of what has of the stories that have been set up in your mind that hold you back, and help you to release them. That's its whole purpose. So the session we're going to do on Monday isn't going to be quite a full session. It's only going to be about 35 minutes, I think. And it's not going to be personalised, because normally if you go for a full therapy session, it would be you would be talking and telling your story to the therapist. And as you do that, they would be responding with slightly different suggestions, or they might be able to guide you more deeply. And then you would get a recording that is to listen to for 21 days that's absolutely tailored to you. What Anne-Marie has done for us on Monday is she has put together a session that is general, that can be used by everyone, that goes through the main things that most people deal with around purpose, connecting with their sense of purpose. And so we're really excited to bring that to you, because she's designed it specifically for this group. So she's been looking at everybody's comments. She has done it for this, you know, this element of purpose, because it really fits with the process and everything that we're doing in the group with all the different teachers. But, you know, if you were to think about a session with her, you could do it on anything. It could be, you know, I'm always arguing with my mother, or I'm never able to follow my own path, or why don't I speak up? Why do I always hold myself in and small? Any of these kind of things. It's absolutely amazing for it. And that's not to try and sell or anything. It's to make you aware of, you can do this stuff alone, but you can also do it very quickly. And I think one of the things that always put me off counselling and talking was like, I just couldn't be bothered to talk through it all, and I didn't want to have to tell some stranger all my stuff. And I certainly didn't want to have to go through it multiple times. And so, with RRT, you are very much in control of that process to the degree that you share, and to the, it's the way it is they don't expect you to come back for RRT over and over again. It's designed ideally to get everything done in one session. At the most, it would be 3. And so it's just, for me, I just think it's such a fabulous technique and tool. So I'm excited that you all get to give it a go next week. And so, yeah, I haven't had any more questions. Yeah, it does sound amazing. It is. It really is. The main thing with trauma and with subconscious programs in the brain is that the more aware of the pain that you can, the more aware you are of the pain that could be keeping you stuck, the more aware of that you can be, the more you're then able to notice it and to reframe that story and to change and adapt your behavior as a result of that. And it all just starts with your thinking. As soon as you start to tell yourself better stories, better messages, to be your own inner cheerleader, to fill your own cup up, rather than, this is something I talk to a lot of clients about, is especially if they're going through a difficult transition of a career change where there might be obstacles, where they might not necessarily be finding it easy. I think one of the things that past traumas can cause people to do is it's almost a bit like walking around with like Oliver Twist. He has this bowl and he goes to he goes, I can't think who the character is in the book, but he basically goes up to the front and says, "Please sir, can I have some more?" And he's giving his power away by saying, "Please sir, can I have some more?" And he knows he's going to get bollocked for it, basically. And what you don't want to do is be going around in the world with this empty bowl and saying, "Please, can I have some? I'm not worthy." And this is how we give our power away. This is how we keep ourselves small. But the benefit of keeping ourselves small is that we feel safe. We don't, your brain the brain is a very tricky thing. It works on this pleasure pain theory or concept. So your brain, when the subconscious is telling you, stay safe, stay small, don't do anything risky, what happens is if you decide to start reprogramming your brain, it can bring the anxiety levels up, it can bring the stress up, your body can physically respond. And here's an interesting fact: the brain can't tell the difference between fear and excitement. They both have the same physiological responses in the body. So whenever you have that feeling, you have to tell yourself, no, I'm just excited. I'm excited for the new. That's the best way to move through that. If there's something deeper going on, you might need a little bit of extra help. But if you can really focus on, instead of focusing on the fear and going into that spiral of the negative stories, say to yourself, oh no, like that fear that's the excitement because I'm doing something different. I'm going into the unknown. I'm expanding. I'm committed to making these changes. I'm committed to my path. I'm committed to my goals and the direction that I'm heading in. So tell yourself, my brain can't tell the difference between excitement and fear. This is excitement that you're feeling. And it's really important to remember that, because then you can say, I'm excited, and I'm excited because I'm claiming my power. I'm reframing my stories. This is where I want to go, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. And, this is all a journey. So you're not going to get it right every time. You're not going to be perfect. And just because you've reframed, find that it never affects you again. Yes, that will happen in many cases, but there will be certain things where it takes a little bit more time and a little bit more practice. But what I can tell you is it gets so much easier the more you practice it. This becomes like second nature the more often you do it. And, you know, meditation, and in particular, there's a meditation called Be Still and Know, which is from quite a controversial person, but the technique itself is amazing, because what it does is it raises your level of awareness so that you can see these things more easily, so that you can kind of sit back a little bit and just be like, wow. It just, that split second when the subconscious programming takes over, it just gives you a little bit of breathing room to see that that's taking over and to just sit still within it. That's why it's called Be Still and Know. So meditation, ones that aren't necessarily full of suggestion and words, but very quiet ones that just ask you to be aware of your breathing or of your hand or of your mind. These can be really, really useful as a tool and as a practice to help keep you aware of the pain and keep you aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, and to reframe them much more quickly. So I hope that's helped. I haven't had any massive questions tonight. Just thank you for being live. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And yeah, just remember wabi sabi, or wabi sabi, like wasabi. You'll remember it now, wasabi. Wabi sabi, which is about how beauty lies in the flaws. So don't be ashamed. Don't feel humiliated. Don't judge yourself negatively for these things or for how you hold yourself back. Just remember that this stuff unites us all. It's the one thing that we all absolutely have in common. And most people don't talk about it. Most people hide it away in shame. And, you know, it takes a lot more energy to hold it all in, to hold it all down, to ignore it. And we're often so afraid to face the pain, the emotion, the fear, what we actually felt, what we actually experienced honestly, that we push it away. But the truth is, the second you begin to face it, to acknowledge it, to allow it to be, without judging it as right or wrong, because you know, like two people can be in a situation and one person perceives it positively and another person doesn't, and the only thing that's different is that they're both looking through different lenses, through different sets of experiences, different life experiences, different sets of knowledge, and neither one of them is wrong. They're both just having their own individual experience to the situation. And so this is why there's no point in judging yourself or hiding it away. You've not done anything wrong. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So be bold, be brave, and let yourself go into the painful stories, and don't try to label them as right or wrong. Just say, this was my experience. Raw. Doesn't matter if other people disagree. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. This is what I experienced. These were the facts. And this is how I experienced it. And your stories will unfold and help. And as you reframe them, like, most people end up getting to a point where they say in therapy that there's a core wound. So there's one core thing, and what we do is we spend our life going around the edges of it, dealing with all the small little symptoms and being like, oh, we've solved it. And normally most people go through quite a few sessions of that before they finally get to the core wound. And you know, some people actually spend decades going around all this surface level stuff without getting into the core ever, because they're too afraid. And so it really starts with this acknowledging how you have experienced difficult things. So is this by Kari Landry? I don't know who that is. No, this is just me talking. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. I didn't quite see when it came through, Lindsay. But yeah, basically, people can spend years spiraling around this stuff and not getting to the core wound. And if you've spent years going from one thing to another, to another, to another, trying to find answers, I would say it's probably connected with avoidance of what you really experienced, or feeling that you don't have the right to have your opinion and have your say on it for some reason. So yeah, I hope that helps. I'm going to call it a day there. If you have any further questions, like I said, drop me an email over on um, evolving on the Evolving Careers Facebook page. You're always welcome to book a free 30-minute session. It's just in the appointments. You can just book one of those if you want, if you ever need. And in response to the meditation question, no, it's by somebody called Roy Masters. I will see if I can dig out a link and share it if anybody wants that. And it's quite difficult to begin with, but once you've done it for about a month or so, it does get a lot easier. And some people do it, and within a week, like, people are saying to them, what are you doing? Like, you're so much calmer. Some people, it takes longer, but it's really, really powerful. And I personally love it. I don't necessarily love him or his teachings. I think some of the stuff is very from a particular, some of his views are from a particular era. They're not necessarily well thought out, but this meditation, I just think it's one of the best I've ever done. So that's just my opinion though. And so yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's one thing that I can sum up as the number one thing that I'd like you to remember from tonight's session. And I think it's just notice the stories you're telling yourself and work on reframing them. Just notice and reframe, notice and reframe. And like, I've been doing this stuff for 25 years and I still have to use these simple techniques. We all do. It's like you every time you turn a corner, like, it's like a spiral, and you end up coming back through the same issues and the same stories, but on a deeper level over and over again. I assume that it only stops if you get enlightened, which very few people do. So for the vast majority of us, I don't know, maybe things will change in the future and someone will invent a way to get us all there faster. But yeah, that's my take on it. So notice and reframe, notice and reframe. Yeah, that's it. So have a great evening or rest of the day, and I will see you on Monday for the session with Anne-Marie. Take care. Bye. I've just got to figure out how to stop it now. There we go.